Hey y'all, Tre'vell Anderson with BlackTalk, a film screening and criticism salon series where Black movies matter. In the great tradition of the Harlem Renaissance, I've brought together a fabulous group of cultural workers, beautiful thinkers, to watch a movie and talk about it. We're putting the power and purpose of film criticism back in the hands where it belongs, the beloved community. For our third film in the series, it's guest curated by the one, the only, Amber J. Phillips, aka Amber Abundance, and she took us back into Spike Lee's discography with 1996's Girl 6. We're talking sex work, we're talking fashion, we're talking Prince. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Slayzhon for more, and we hope you enjoy.
Thank you all for coming. Yes, and for saying yes. And thank you so much for putting this together. I am really excited to be here because I love culture critique. I think it is an art form that you would think with more access, more information, and social media that we would be doing more of it. But I think a lot of us have been scared out of it for resource reasons or jobs, but I think it is the role of not only the artists, but the audience, especially folks like you all, which is why you're invited, who have lots of references, to actually engage with bodies of work and say what we think about them, whether it's taken as good or bad, which, so what? You know, that is what Black people do. We gather around and we talk about the work. So today we watched Girl 6, directed by Spike Lee, written by Suzan-Lori Parks. And this movie takes place in 1996. It talks about sex work, the journey towards acting or fame. And I think it's really relevant now in terms of, one, it's one of Spike Lee's few movies where there's a female lead, a Black female lead. Lots of thoughts on that I want to hear from y'all. But a text that I think is rich for dialogue. So to start, I really want to hear from folks who, was this your first time seeing Girl 6?
This was my first time seeing it. I've never seen it before, and I'm ashamed to say I don't think I've heard of it before. I know that I've said some things about Spike's work in the past. But aside from like Malcolm X, I really enjoyed this Spike Lee joint. I love the soundtrack. I'm also ashamed, like as someone who's a fan of Prince's music, I did not know the How Come You Don't Call Me song was a remake. I only know Alicia's version. But no, I did. I mean, she was tickling them keys, you know, the first 3 albums. But what I will say is that I enjoyed so much about this movie, the cameos. I love that Rolanda was the news anchor. For those of you who know Rolanda, you know. I loved just all of like the cameos, and you know, you and I were kind of talking as it was rolling, like the fashion, the makeup trends, how they're here today. Everybody's looking like that today. And so, yeah, out of all Spike Lee films I've seen, this is up there for me.
Other thoughts? Who else?
Yeah, so I would say this was my first time seeing the movie and hearing about the movie. I low-key was like in the bathroom and I was like, should I Google? But like, is that cheating?
It is cheating.
And so I refrained. But you know, one thing that I really appreciated about the movie that I wasn't expecting was the ways that like it infused all of these different like film techniques and like styles and like aesthetics, like, you know, when they brought in like the Meet the Jeffersons aesthetic and like how that just kind of like seamlessly wove in with this like, I don't know, blurring of like her reality and like what was, and like the fantasy, and also like the Foxy Brown references, you know, so I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed like taking that little like trip through Black film, but like through Spike Lee in a way that I don't think like I'm fully accustomed to in his work. So yeah, I liked it a lot.
I love that point that you're making, because I think, especially right now, a lot of people are referencing Spike Lee, and for him to reference other Black movies in his work is kind of new. It's a new take. So More folks, more initial reactions. What are y'all feeling? Yes,
it
go
was
for it.
my first time watching the film. I've heard about it before because a friend of mine always referenced it. But when I heard it was Spike Lee, I thought it was going to be something totally different. And I was just shocked. The costumes, the wigs, it was so many wigs. Oh,
An assortment of wigs.
Like,
No wig made a repeat appearance, honey.
Like the wigs, the outfits, like y'all said, the makeup, everybody, like every single woman that was in that film looked great. Like I was questioning my sexuality. So yeah, I
Not you coming out.
I'm coming in. So yeah, I couldn't believe it was a Spike Lee joint. So
Okay. All right.
I mean, I was reserving my comments because I didn't like it.
Okay.
I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy
I was waiting till we get there.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I
Jump in.
agree with all the visual parts. Like,
Wait, real quick. Have you seen it before? Or this year? Okay, so this is your first time.
I haven't seen it before. I've seen some of the other stuff. Like, I love School Days. It's not like I'm just like super anti-Spike Lee. This one just didn't do well for me. It felt like there was a lot of times we were driving down dead ends, having to circle back, drive down another dead end, having to circle back, and over time it just made me feel like I didn't trust the direction of the film to tell a story, and it felt like what he thought he was trying to say to me at the beginning with the director who like overexposed her. To me, he showed up like that over time. Like he just kept exposing stories with no care. And I love the idea of like the aesthetics. Like I was into the wigs, but all of that to me started to feel very challenging too, because it was like, what's her real narrative? At points she felt like she was in control of herself, but then other points it felt like she was like offering herself up as ingenue just to get casted in the Spike Lee. It was confusing. So
this was my second or third time seeing it. And I've seen it in different points of my life, from like college to 20s, now in 30s. And so I think watching it now, aesthetically, yes, that's what we as Black people look
Right.
like.
Black people just look good.
Gorgeous, lighting. We're lit well. In that time period of Spike specifically, a lot of people hate his work during that time period. That she hate me. Like everyone hates how he just viewed women. Like everything he gave in that time period was like his view of what liberating women look like. And so for him to focus on sex work specifically, and to your point of just like, yeah, like where is she going? What is she feeling? But some women probably feel like that. And that maybe has been his experience with his engagement with women. And so I think it's crunchy. It's just a crunchy film.
That's a great adjective. It's just a crunchy ass film.
It's like you love it or you hate it. Like, and it's not
Like all
giving
of his work.
nostalgic Spike. It's not giving good feeling Spike. But there are moments in it where you're like, oh, this is a Spike Lee movie. Like
The jump cuts did it for me. That's what
Yeah.
reminded me that I was
it was
like,
like, oh, this is a Spike Lee movie.
Forrest
but
Whitaker,
It
Spike
was like
is one of
that
them.
dolly. What do they call that shot?
dollar
That
shot.
like yeah.
Even when like when she was answering the phone at one point and like it blurs out, it's reference to like Crooklyn when things kind of get warped and like it's this warped sense of reality. So it's like I think it's just a crunchy ass film. So you just
But let me say, I appreciate you, like, speaking on this, like, lack of care, because I think that that's also something that's characteristic of Spike Lee joints. Is like once like Black women engage in like sex or like, any sort of like autonomy around sex or like ownership around sex, like it always becomes some slippery slope where like she is ultimately punished. Like, but it also feels like, thinking about what you were saying, like thinking about like the beginning, it just, I don't know, it feels like you like how is she supposed to escape it? Like she's not really offered like an out that like even in her like at first she like didn't have this choice. She was like in front of this cast director and she's like, no, like I'm gonna like take my power back and like I'm gonna be in this situation where I'm safe and I'm da-da-da-da. But like even then somehow, because even though she's like doing it on her own terms, she still ends up in a fucked up situation, like in a fucked up unsafe situation that like ultimately is like, it's your fault that like you're in this situation. And I don't know, it's just Black women are just always in trouble for like being sexual beings in a Spike Lee joint.
And I think this also comes up in what he was trying to do with the trap door or the elevator door, which is like, I think people engage with Black women and even their interactions with sex work as like she's choosing that, and that's you. When you make these choices, you choose everything that comes along with them. But then we also have this narrative of a little Black girl playing and leaning up against the door and falling, right? So I think it's an interesting thing with some of these movies where you're getting a depiction of what some people might feel and what they might be going through, but he's not providing the commentary. He's not making the decision for us. He's turning that over to us, which is like, is that caring? Is it not caring? What does that mean for a movie filled with women? How are we supposed to take that in? And the other side of Girl 6 that I find interesting is that nobody wants to claim it anymore. It's not talked about in terms of the movies that he makes. When they're asked about it, they don't refer to it. Even the writer was like, well, she has an interaction where a part of her career involved phone sex operating. But it's like, these are the pieces of, even when we talk about that journey, especially in entertainment, we never want to, it's courageous when people actually talk about their engagements with not just sex and pleasure, but sex work as a means to get there. And I think this is a theme that's also coming up a lot in women in rap and Cardi B, and like, okay, what did you do to get here? But also, what are the options that are presented to women to, because we also saw her work a bunch of odd jobs.
We did.
We got that engagement, and this was one of the few places where, despite what's happening on the other side of that phone, there was some guidance that was provided to her in that work with the iconic Jennifer Lewis. So I want to hear your thoughts on that too, like that her entry point and that being met with like this kind of collective of women, which also reminds me of the moment we get in like The Bluest Eye with Toni Morrison, where she meets a group of sex workers who are putting her on game. I think that's the other part that I will say is a failure, because you see moments and interactions where the other girls are like, girl, you better get a coloring, you better get something to distract you. You better don't get too lost in it, where you're trying to get that guidance, but are you taking it? Are you not? And what happens when you don't? So I'm interested to know about that interaction, or if you all felt like that was, what did you feel like about those interactions between the other women in the movie, and what that camaraderie or friendship, because she kind of denies it. She denies those women, and how that impacted her.
I guess for me, we frequently, when sex work is depicted amongst women, there is a sorority of sorts where, you know, people are grouped together. Sorry, I had dick drip in my You gotta see the movie to catch that.
You gotta see it as a part of the movie.
By the icon, Jennifer Lewis. I tripped over my words because I was going to mention dick drip, but you gotta see the movie. And so I think that, like I said, it speaks to that sorority and that camaraderie in that space to get people to where these individual sex workers want to be. To your point about Black women being punished, I think about like how even those women like rallied around her, and there was clearly some cautionary tale that they don't reveal. Like, remember what happened to that one girl when she gave her number out? And so I think that in the storytelling, that's what then makes the punishment warranted, because you know what you're stepping into. It's one of those things like you know what you're stepping into, and you do have like this tribe around you where you all are all in the thick of it together, and now you know what happened. It's like, it almost reminds me of like biblical stuff, like you know, like you know what happened, and then she still chose to deviate from that plan, and as a result, you know, now she's getting harassed and punished and all of those things. So I think, just to put a bow on my point, and most times we see sex work depicted amongst women, it's always a sorority of sorts. They're always taking care of each other.
Yeah, there's a moment where she has her first call and she receives a flower, a corsage, and with the other girls who clearly had their moment too.
It's like pledging.
Shout out to Jennifer Lewis.
Oh
Yeah, always.
Right, as the mother of the girls.
Who's in charge of the girls?
You know.
That's another good one.
You know, I think what was interesting for me, juxtaposed against like the sorority, right, of the other sex workers, was the various different types of men, right, that cycled through this narrative, and how horrible some of them are to her. And it I don't know if we, supposed to take something from that or whatnot as well, like as we are also looking at the varied, you mentioned how we kind of take a tour through Black film, right? Through these different roles that she and fantasies that she is playing out. But the ways that the men in the movie, including her ex, ?
Yes.
Ex-husband, right? It just, I thought that was really interesting. The ways that the men were, the evil ones, if you will, for the most part in the film, and all of the women in particular were extending, this character. I guess save, Spike Lee's character, but all of the women were doing their best to come around her, right? Whereas all of the men, maybe save Spike Lee's character, were, trying to take from her, were trying to, force her to do something, be a different person.
His character as well. He wanted rent money.
Yeah, he wanted rent money.
He did.
And to your point, I think maybe we were supposed to take something from that, because as you were speaking, I was thinking about when she was in, orientation or the meeting or whatever, and Jennifer Lewis's character did keep referencing, she repeatedly referenced in one way or another how they're like big shots on Wall Streets, but then like these degenerates under the rock type thing. So I don't know what we were supposed to get from that, because it went over my head.
I was confused as a whole too, just with how many like cutaway segments sort of to look at like sports paraphernalia. Like that just didn't feel like that was a part of her anything. So it was weird to me. That's how I felt like Spike was taking up space, by being like, well, this is what I'm particularly like. And I hate to make this comparison, but it was like he gave me what Tyler Perry does when he inserts himself into movies, and he's like, now I'm this clean cut man, and this is what men should look like. Which, as a young male, I didn't really know who I was supposed to grasp onto while I was watching that film, because I was like, in other movies when I've seen him, I've sort of related to his character. Like I'm like, oh, he's like the quirky friend on the side. He's not Denzel, but he has this. I didn't think in this one I felt at all like relatable to him, and I also
he was still manipulative.
And that makeup scene where she was doing her makeup, he was like rubbing on her shoulder. So I was like, okay, where's this going?
There's hints of that. I think the word care, and what I saw through and through was care in different ways. Like, we're seeing women care, but then we're also seeing them care in so many different ways. Of they're caring for these men on the phone. Sex work is a care work. For me.
Caretaker.
No, it really. I'm giggling,
like,
but you're absolutely
sex
correct.
work is a care work. Like even down to her listening about the man's whether it's true or not.
Right.
Whether it's true or not,
the
what they're
threesome?
the
His mother.
mother.
Oh, his mother. Yeah, they're therapists. Yeah.
Like they're therapists. They're care workers in that sense for men.
Yeah.
That's what their work is for men, and so that's what we saw, and we got Jennifer and all the other women caring for each other. It just wasn't enough, and so it's like, what is the capacity of care that women carry for ourselves, for each other, and then how we constantly give to men. And I think there was a lot of care in that. It just was the reality of what care actually looks like.
Yeah, and I'm interested in what happened because, she's on this path of becoming an actress. And I think that the switch that happened when they found out she was doing that care work and how instantly the men wanted her to start caring for them in the same exact way because they found out she was doing the sex work
You can do
now.
this for strangers, why you can't do this for me?
Right. To the point where a person who is literally her ex-husband is trying to have sex with her in the alley.
In the alley.
And the gas station man, or the bodega man.
Salon.
Bodega man. Yeah, I forgot they don't have gas stations. The bodega man.
But I think that and I'm not sure if I can fully articulate this thought. So maybe I'm gonna put the tentacles out and maybe I want y'all to catch it. But I'm also thinking that there's something to the dynamic of your point about care work, but how so much of our care work is uncompensated. It's not respected as real deal labor, but how in this instance, this is care work where they're getting paid. You know what I'm saying? They're getting money on. She went from getting 1 carton of cigarettes to 4.
All at once.
She's making money,
I got it.
from home phone
No more
to home
Lucy's.
phone.
No more Lucy's.
And so but I also think about that within the realm, and this is the thing that I don't fully know how to articulate, which is that she's also pretending to be white, and what does it mean for a black woman to be making money for doing care work, which historically we know that we do not get paid for. But also for her to be getting paid for this care work because people think that she's white. Yeah. And I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I just...
You saying it. Yeah, I think you
It's just interesting. It's just interesting. And that was a thing that never also... To your point about us going down dead ends, that never really came back up. And it was never really clear to me, do y'all know that she's black? Especially because her cadence on the cool.
Yeah.
I'm I didn't know that was a sister. If I was on the phone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And that's why she was getting 17 calls out of 38 calls.
But that also doesn't matter with the fantasy.
Right.
I still found it interesting in a pre-Me Too world. I think to her acting coach, yelling at her, telling her to grow up.
Grow up.
So what? A director or a casting person asked you to expose yourself, grow up. But even when she was in her interview with Jennifer Lewis's character, Jennifer Lewis, one of the first things her character was impressed with was that she had a young sounding voice. So I think that this movie, if you squint, it is one of those things where you get what you need to get from it, because it does speak to the sex industry, which is the younger you are, typically the more, or the younger you can make yourself look. Typically, the more you are in demand from men. And also maybe it's some weird metaphor about how assimilation to whiteness, or proximity to whiteness rather, you'll get more money in life in general, inside sex work and outside sex work, wherever you land on that proximity scale to whiteness.
But this has me thinking about blackfishing, to an extent. How the people love a white girl that's pretending to be black. So Maybe
but
the
also look at the
people-
time period. We're in 1996 versus where we are right now.
But I'm saying like maybe there's something to somebody feeling.
I want to talk about. I want to offer that up too. Yeah. Because in terms of this, so basically in the beginning of the movie, when she's not the beginning, but when she's going through orientation, they're going through their personas, which I also want to talk about the board in terms of the list of folks who are seen as why they are calling in, right? So we can talk about that, but it's like regardless of who you are, you unless specified or requested, you are white, is what was told to those girls, right? And then we get this kind of standout moment with one of the phone operators. Not Naomi.
She was the. She had shorter hair.
She was very black, very black.
Black lipstick.
Black. It gave lesbian. It gave alternative. It gave alternative black girl. But she was serving it, right? Like you're getting a view of her.
I'm gonna give you.
Very much sorry to bother you.
Yeah,
Like, she was in the character.
Yeah. So what did you? I think someone was throwing something on top of that, or what were you engaging with, AJ?
I'm still unsettled. That was hard for me because it felt like there was I love history, and I just feel like there was so many history levels of even her imagination of becoming Dorothy Dandridge, and then we get a scene of Halle Berry, and it's all of these women are sort of creating their personages off of the history of however far the last black woman got is how far they could take one more step forward. So it's interesting to me how they're all sort of imagining themselves through each other, but then it was also interesting how to your point, if his youth is the king, this little black girl got thrown away. Her story was kind of hot, and then it over time faded, and the only person who cared about her was the woman who was in the next step of that.
Yeah.
So that to me leaves me with this idea of if we're saving somebody, what does that even look like?
I think what it in hearing that, I'm was it the purpose to save someone? Or was the purpose of this movie to do exactly what's happening right now, is to catch all of these bits, and this is just a stream of whatever fucking consciousness he got going on and what he's experienced, and there just wasn't enough conversation to follow up, or we don't know. 1996. We don't know.
It's interesting to I really think conversations like this is important because it's interesting to hear the women what they took from this movie, because without y'all talking, I did not get none of that. I really looked at this film, which I hate when I watch movies, from a producing standpoint and a storytelling standpoint. And AJ was saying, there were so many parts of this film that was just crunchy. It was so crunchy, and it was so...
Like you said, you can catch what you need.
Which is why I'm glad y'all are having this conversation, because y'all literally pulled from every little thing where I was okay, where is the rest of that? This little girl fell down the elevator. Where's the rest of that? Everything Spike introduced, it was gone instantly. We see Halle Berry, then that is gone. We see all of this stuff, and it's just done with for the rest of the film. While me as a viewer, I'm waiting, not only waiting for that to pop back up, but wondering what the hell does that have to do with this? So I'm thinking,
consistent to me, that's so crazy, is the sports shit, all this stuff. He just kept.
Because this is from a male.
Right, exactly.
I honestly thought Spike Lee's character was going to be a huge love interest in this. I'm thinking it's going to be the one bad guy, the ex, versus the Spike Lee character, and she eventually takes him because he had her back throughout the whole. It had nothing to do with.
I think also what's happening too is Spike knows he's talking to black people. He doesn't need to tell you the significance of Halle Berry's presence.
Right.
He doesn't need to tell you why we're referencing Carmen. He doesn't, because you should know that.
Right.
You should know that's the Jeffersons. You should know that's Foxy Brown. And now what that's for you. That's for you. I think that is historically the critique of Spike Lee, is that there's no plot. But when you sit and listen to black people talk, sometimes the plot is the act of communicating this particular moment in time and what this gives. And I think even in the critique part of that, Girl 6 still deserves a conversation. There's enough there where we can be talking about it, but we're not. But we will spend time with Malcolm X. We'll spend time with Do the Right Thing. We'll spend time with all these school days. We'll stomp the yard. Number one. And not only will we spend time with it, we'll honor it. School days has been honored and referenced so many times. The only other part in culture where I've seen Girl 6 come up is with Tiana Taylor. She used it in one of her music videos. Yes.
Which video?
Wish I could have. It's called 1-800 something. Okay. Like, it's a full Girl 6 reference. And we also, for context, Tiana Taylor considers herself Spike Tay or something like that. Spike T. So,
is that his fan base?
Tiana Taylor?
No, Spike T.
No, Tiana Taylor.
She calls herself.
She wants to be a Spike Lee because she's trying to.
Oh, so she calls herself Spike T.
Yes.
Okay, I thought that was his beehive.
That's her Spike Lee. That's her inspiration.
She is inspired by like a mentee.
She's inspired by his work.
Right. So this movie has been kind of like intentionally pushed back, where I'm like, we had a major black male director. I have my thoughts, even when I think about like Waiting to Excel being directed by Forrest Whitaker. We love the movie. It's a bit all over the place, but those visuals that come out of that we talk about them. But there are certain parts of black culture, black contemporary culture, where I'm always surprised by when we don't want to imply meaning, right? When we don't want to add our own context as thinkers and pulling from the black pool of genius to see, okay, what can we add to this in terms of culture critics? And that's one of the biggest reasons why I picked it for you all to view, because it's not talked about. And I think Noemi Campbell's in there, Jennifer Lewis, like he was Rolanda, like the Halle Berry, and we also know that I believe Spike Lee was one of the first people to put Halle Berry in a movie. Right? So like he also has that ability where he's referencing his impact. Not saying
uncovering black film.
I have reference.
For what it's worth, the way my brain was also working while watching this is, I noticed during the makeup scene, what's our main character's name? Girl 6. Girl 6.
Wait, did she ever get a name?
I don't know.
Not in that. We can talk about that too.
But for what it's worth, during that makeup scene that you mentioned earlier, she used Maybelline Great Lash Mascara.
She did.
And if you know about Maybelline, no. Because Time out. Because to your point about like those pointless, because I was really, when they were in Spike's character's apartment, I was wondering what the sports memorabilia, because there were these wide shots, right? And it's clear sports posters. So I'm like, how is that roping in? But I wonder if that was by happenstance or if that was deliberate, because that was the #1 mascara in the country for years. And so Great Lash is like symbolic of the time. I also thought that a little girl being named Angela was a sign of the times. It's weird. It's almost like hearing a little girl nowadays be named Gladys or Sharon. Which I have Gladys, my mom's name is Sharon, and I have a Gladys in my family. But it's like, a little girl, an 8-year-old girl named Angela. This is how my brain works. I'm sorry, y'all, but I'm processing it in real time.
It's real crunchy.
Okay.
But to your point, what y'all are seeing is different from what we are seeing.
Because in 1996,
there's all this sports moment. We're like, but there's also
Great Lash Mascara.
There's also and we are like, it don't matter what type black woman you are, you know
Great
what
Lash
that
Mascara.
is.
It's like a time capsule.
And in 1996, the Just For Me boxes were bumping. I think that the little 8-year-old girl should have been named Alicia for context. I'm just saying, look at the time. If you're gonna pick an A name, pick Alicia over Aunt. Like that was around the Dominiques, Moniques, Brittany's. You know who we grew up with. I'm sorry.
I just also want to talk about the sports for just a second, because I think that for me it highlighted their similarities in terms of what they were obsessed with. She was obsessed with, I mean, to me, the scenes where we're cutting away into the Black movies is a daydream, right? She's fantasizing about these things. And we all know that men fantasize about being on these sports team shows because it's not possible for them, to the point where he has a very childlike thing of these cards. Even though he can't pay his rent, he's buying Topps cards, right? So I think those are just as meant to compare, like, because he's also judging her for her dream.
He's looking down.
Right, he's looking down on her, but he has a similar thing. You also ain't making rent, and you can't find a pathway. You could if you wanted to, because let's be real, these men is in sex work too. Fitness instructors.
Now, why am I in?
Now, why are trainers in it? Photographers. Photographers are the reason I got on dating apps.
Come on up, child.
Everyone's a photographer. You want me
and
to
there's this very, it's very covered up. It's very covered up so that they can maintain masculinity and its power, right?
Is waking it up.
Of course.
But I think that's what it was, is because that is a childlike obsession. That is something he is, even Spike himself, that's something he's been obsessed with since he was a kid. It's a theme in all of his movies, is his love of baseball and New York sports teams. So I think that is what it's meant to magnify, how much space that is taking up for him, because he also, that character, what does he do? Nothing.
We don't know what his job is.
I think he's a landlord.
Middle characters. One was a thief.
Yes.
And the other one
was a child.
He was a kid.
The brownstone reminded me of For Colored Girls with the hallway.
And then with the hallway phone.
But yeah, Spike's character was very interesting, because I felt with all that he brought to the table, he was one of the more nuanced men that was shown. And to you all's point about, the women doing the labor, I think about like the conversation this year, how like, for example, June was kind of hijacked with Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Everybody wanted to squash Pride Month. And I think about how women, and follow me, like you said, what did you say earlier? Tentacles, we're throwing them out. So follow me with this, right?
Okay.
So the women in this film are communal. Like I said, a sorority, they're taking care of each other. And the men don't have other men to talk to. So the women are left to shoulder those same cares for the men as well. Am I making sense, or is my cup talking?
No, I want to say, but I think that's how men are offered fraternity. Like, it's individual pillars. You're not supposed to be with other men. It's supposed to be like, you create power here, you create power here. And that's what I was so triggered by this baseball analogy, because it's like, well, you guys are creating a sorority around a certain sort of growing up, not to project every other male experience in here, but I think there's also something at play where men are sort of seeing it as like a game of which flavor do you want. Like, I really feel like the fact that she was wearing every wig and every fantasy, and then even I also want to talk about, for me, how Naomi Campbell is the almost symbolized version of like being able to do that for generations and decades. Like, I've seen this woman be blonde, brunette, all of it, and it's like, something about the fact that she was like so not empowered the way that I know her was also challenging.
Naomi's character.
I just was like, why would you cast her to be in this if she was gonna be like,
she's at that time,
right?
She is the ideal woman.
Yes.
She's the supermodel of the world.
And I think there's reference.
And she's wearing a shirt that says "Model Suck" in the first time we see her.
And just like there are great singers who will never sign a recording contract, who will be in the church their whole lives, there are great looking women and men who could be top models.
I like this.
Who, you know, are going to be on the phone lines, or in our day and age, the OF.
There's something there with her cameo specifically and Madonna's cameo
Yeah.
around.
Oh, I forgot about Madge.
Yes.
He was in
I
his
did-
casting bag.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Don't get the it.
Y'all can give you anything.
He got all of the it girls.
Also gotta remember, around that time, musically, George Michael did the same thing
and blew up.
and blew up. And
Oh,
it was
you're talking about
such
his
a
music
thing with his
videos.
Yes.
music videos.
Yeah.
He got all the it girls.
Because I feel like Rihanna to me was like, if this was today's version, if she was somewhere in the mix, I would come into this movie with a certain expectation of what femininity and also chameleon-like personality. Like she's the little Kim. She's the one that could be whatever you want her to be. But that's probably what.
But like,
That's
I
my
think
wild.
that it's hard to watch for you, but I quite enjoyed Naomi being there.
Yeah.
I did too.
And,
Because,
and
well,
being there
that's her-
because
that's-
just seeing
She was a
her
welcome
and her
distraction.
being there and also being communal,
Right.
Yeah.
which we know.
Which we know.
She was acting. She was acting.
We all Naomi, but where I was going to see all y'all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All y'all thought I was going there, but where I'm actually going, which we know in the industry of modeling,
Yeah.
it is not communal. But y'all said that.
Okay.
Good saying.
Yes. No. In that industry, especially as a black model during that time,
Yeah.
she is the only one.
Yeah.
She was the only one.
This was pre-Tyra.
This is
Yes. And this was also around
In
the time
96.
where she had to use the other white women she was in community with to keep working.
Yep.
Yes.
So for her to be present when they're saying, and you must be white.
And you must
So even when you take away the visual,
Wow.
yes, everybody is the desirability is democratized, except for, and I think that is the failure of a lot. I think that's where black men lose their threads, or they lose their range. They don't have the range to engage with the feminism of it all, the patriarchy of it all, and race. Because black women are operating with all of it at
All
the
of
same
it. Yep.
time.
Yep.
It's not, I'm this before I'm this, or it literally is not. Because when you democratize all of it, we know what, especially when it comes to femininity, which we just don't. I love being a black woman. I think it is so fun. Oh my God, it's such a good time. But I think where I'm also clear that any access that we have to womanhood is pure desire.
Ooh.
Damn. Yeah.
It's because we said so.
Oh.
And that's for all of us. Any access we want to womanhood is because we said so. Because that was created for the purpose of white supremacy. So I think it's always so interesting to me to also bring why I would love to see this in the context of today, to see that visually, because we're not even talking about visual sex work or porn or meet and greets. Like, even in terms of her punishment was she got disappointed when it came to trying to meet up with that person.
Yeah.
But if she was put in a dangerous situation,
She was put in a dangerous
when the
situation.
dude said he was gone.
You know, with her
But she
address.
also thought this was the safest option.
Right.
Because she could have did the peep show.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
She could have did her own line.
Or worked for
first.
Madonna. Didn't Madonna have strippers too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she eventually worked for
she
Madonna.
eventually-
That's how she started
Which I
taking the
didn't
calls at
understand
home.
that
But
part
she
either.
started with that discernment to be like, I need to be safe.
Which
I need to do, this is what I can do. This is what I can do to make money.
and
be
still
safe,
go to auditions.
feel supported, still go to auditions. She lost herself in it all.
Yeah.
Because it was giving her the instant gratification of fame, of acknowledgement.
She was
and
popular.
She was popular.
So my wheels are turning, right? So I'm thinking about the group of women and thinking about, I keep going to your point about Black women, liberation, sexuality, punishment. And all of those women came from different walks of life, but there is something to be said about the engagement scene. Because what is it? Remember one of them?
yes.
She was screaming. She got proposed.
She got married.
They were all celebrating her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking to like, did her fiance know what she did for work? What what did that look like? What did that look like? And there's also something to be said for her not being a Black woman.
Right.
And she got the coveted ring that in 1996 everyone was tripping over themselves for. So I don't know, my wheels are, I feel like there's a piece in that as well, at least visually.
I mean, he didn't go deeper into it.
Maybe it's related, but it goes back to something Dom mentioned earlier, which is that, you know, yes, Spike Lee is the director, but Miss Susan is the writer. A Black woman.
Oh, Susan's a Black woman.
Suzan-Lori Parks.
See, I didn't Google.
Yeah.
I heard Susan and assumed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, she kinda like the rest of us.
She wrote, she's a playwright, and she wrote the Top Dog.
Top Dog, Underdog.
Thank you.
Most recently.
Okay.
But I think we haven't touched that yet, you know, besides you just, you know, touching on it. And I wonder how perhaps maybe Spike Lee's direction of her words might have twisted something. And also how, you know, that might have been what she wrote.
And see, and that's what I was thinking. Like as we talk about the sports, I'm like, I don't know if Susan really, you know what I mean? I feel like that was like Spike saying like, this is Spike Lee joint, and y'all know
I need to be in the movie. I need to be in the mix.
Can I go back to that? I still feel like, even when I think about like what sex can mean for the men in that, like how he was sort of trying to take her personality down to a certain place for his pleasure to be, he didn't even want her love. He kept trying to reject anything she brought forward. He was like, I don't want it. Yeah, but I think that's because sex is taught differently. And the game of sport is taught differently to males versus women, where there is sort of this expectation where your care is bottom line. Like, you could tell me you love me, duh, what else are you supposed to do? That's all what I'm used to being offered. But when you think about how men are in community with other men, there isn't even like we're just now getting to those nuances, and now men are saying out loud, like, I love you, bro, I'm taking therapy. And now we're like, but there's also like a huge championship ring you get for saying you're just going to therapy. You don't even have to actually be listening. And I feel like this is where I'm saying like, or telling the truth. And I'm saying like, it was hard to watch that character because there wasn't enough for me, male, anything to grasp onto. There was
Spike's character or the Italian
The entire
guy.
movie was like, these are things I can be. I have complete access to be any one of these men, I'm sure, but what I want to be.
Also, not for nothing, the movie isn't about the men.
But he makes himself a part
that's
of
what I
it.
was saying earlier, Amber. I know more about the men than I know about any woman in that movie. I know every
So we
man
did watch two
profession.
different movies.
I know all of their names. I know all of their professions. I know if they're married. All of the women had number names. They were all dog tag names. And like, I know nothing about the women. The girl got married. We know nothing else about that. The girl that did the...
Okay.
We didn't even...
That's his favorite part.
That's your shit.
She was leaning into the imagination.
Spike Lee, to me, he still inserted himself, his real world. He was creating that brand. He was still inserting his brand even in this fantasy, where Naomi Campbell, even at her power, had to become his fantasy in this moment. She had to be controllable. Because we know her in any other space, she will.
But she was playing a role.
But he was
But
also.
Spike got to be Spike.
But Spike is always playing that same role.
Yeah. He gets to be
That's the same guy from School Days. That's the same guy from School Days.
Do the right thing. The same guy. Like, it is the same child.
Observation. Yeah, it's just a kid who's watching.
It's the good guy.
Yeah,
But he gets to
It
put
does get
himself
tough.
into that space, much like I feel like Tyler with the casting control can over time teach us that he is the new Denzel, he is the charming, he is the, whatever we. That's why I thought it was crazy to see Halle Berry be like a split second, because even when you look at what she did in Carmen, she was, or you know, in Dorothy Dandridge's story, we saw this entire full narrative of Dorothy where her husbands were abusing her when she got too powerful. They discarded her. All of this is a part of what is consistent with these women, but we don't learn about them till like the reframe.
Yeah.
I feel like Halle wasn't on set. I genuinely feel like it was one of them things, one of those guerrilla style things. Rolando.
We need Holly right here.
Right, we need.
Like, it was, again, to the point of these are the times.
Yeah.
These are the it girls of this time.
Yeah.
And I am going to also put them in my...
Yeah.
Even
And it's
if
not
for a
talked about.
blip, and it's not...
And it's not talked about.
It's got that cast and it's not talked
It
about.
has that many heavy hitters in a cast, and they're not even,
And I didn't even know about
discussed.
I didn't even know about it till tonight.
And I'm grateful.
And it's got Jennifer Lewis in it.
Hello?
Jennifer Washington,
Yeah, everyone is in it. And then, okay, Madonna's, which she also got a lot of critique of, like, why would you put Madonna in it? But she wasn't the central
home, girl. She couldn't wait to deliver that line.
Yeah, and it's also,
She's from
I'm
Detroit.
also grateful that we were able to watch it because it's not available on streaming. What? It is literally tucked away from our eyes to be able to engage with this work. And my last point is at the monologue that she wraps it up with, she references his very first movie, which is She's Gotta Have It. So there's a lot that he was able to put in there in terms of a Spike Lee movie. It is one of my faves. It just is. And it's up there in terms of what can be engaged with. The last point I want to make before we wrap up is I do want to acknowledge Prince soundtracking all of this. And to especially hear your thoughts, Ashley, on this as a music.
Representation in the...
I feel like the inclusion of Prince, one, beyond Spike's love for Prince. Prince is an artist that loves women. I feel he loves women, and he does love black women, and he loves being black. And so for him to soundtrack this just based, like, yes, the music is great, like, to your point, like, he chose certain songs that that you may not have, like, you gotta be in a deep Prince bag for some of it.
Some
like
deep cuts.
For some deep cuts, there were deep cuts in there, and again, I think this also speaks to Spike's access at that time.
Oh, yes.
For him to have access
Specifically with
to
black
Prince's
people.
catalog.
And you know Prince don't give up that catalog, honey.
To him to have access to Prince's catalog throughout the whole entire movie, that
and Apollonia's. Because they played Nasty Girl.
And Apollonia's.
They played Nasty. It's the Vanity
Prince's
Six.
catalog.
Yeah.
It's Prince's actual catalog.
It's his catalog.
Yeah.
For that to be even given access again, it's like, that's
power.
That's power.
96
So
black power.
that's what we witnessed during this time period of Spike's thing. Yes, controversial. I really believe it is meant for us. It was that time was meant for us to be doing this.
Right.
It wasn't meant for a storyline. It wasn't meant for, like, it just wasn't. It was meant to, like, see all of these different touch points of the black experience, and it don't make sense because none of this shit makes sense. We out here just
actual life
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Actual life
It's
doesn't have
crunchy.
a This life is crunchy.
Yeah.
And so it's that, but then you have the thread of a soundtrack of access, the access to people, the access to music.
Yeah.
At a time where Prince was like, y'all not having my
Y'all
music.
can't have any of my music, actually.
Actually.
Can I add to something? to that?
All right.
Okay, but I also but I want to say that, like, to your point about and to your point about, like, it being so fragmented, it feels like an archive, like it feels like this time capsule, like, you know, like which does feel scrapbooky, fragmented. You're tearing off, ripping different pieces and putting them on the page together. not necessarily to tell a story, but just to bring people to a time. And I think that it's so interesting when you think about archives and you think about Blackness and all of those things. And you think about the time that we're in right now, where like digital archives are so fragile, and like, and so I just want to say again, Amberly Hurston, I appreciate you for like recovering this in this way, because I think that like what you're doing is like this like really interesting Black film archival work, because I've never heard of this film. You're saying it's not streaming, but it has all of these bits and pieces that like arguably aren't anywhere else. No. Like, and so I feel like you've like handed us low key like this like visual like digital scrapbook in a way. And like I have to give you your flowers for that. Like thank you.
And I will say I will give my flowers, some of my flowers, to Tre'vell for making this possible and giving me a prompt for I get emotional thinking about I'm keep referencing the Black Pool of Genius. I've been listening to a lot of Donny Hathaway lately, but I appreciate the prompt and the fierceness in making sure that we discuss our work. That we discuss our work and that it is documented and that we are a time capsule, because not for nothing, the folks in this room, y'all are contributing to contemporary Black culture that is not lost on me, which is why I wanted you all here and why it is such a privilege to be able to have these discussions and to know that there are people who are doing the work to make sure that our panels are not just bullshit, okay? That we're actually getting into the work and highlighting what that is. I'm so glad I got to watch Girl 6 with you all. Thank you so much for contributing so much and being here. And thank you again for this prompt and this beautiful work.
Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for Amber, please? All right, thank y'all so much.